Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Forgotten Outdoors podcast. Today, we are so excited. We have Landon Cleverley, one of our longtime childhood friends, on the episode. Guys, this is our first guest on our podcast.
Yeah, no pressure.
No pressure for you, man. This will go down in history.
It's going to be good, man.
Yeah, so we have Landon on the show. We're going to be kind of going a different direction than we usually do with the episode. Usually we are, talking about hunting and fishing and that kind of thing. But today we're going to be talking more about some of Landon's outdoor passions. Some of the ones that we kind of talked about, discussed before this at our fancy breakfast was mountain biking, snow machining. So we're going to get into that, but... welcome, Landon, to the Forgotten Outdoors podcast.
Thanks, yeah, we're excited. We're excited to have guests. I think that for us, that's going to be our way of hopefully giving our listeners a wide range of activities to kind of learn about. Yeah. Obviously, we are not into mountain biking, but it's something that it gets you in the outdoors, which is the whole point of Forgotten Outdoors. So. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself, and then we'll kind of get into some questions.
Sweet. I like it. Well, first of all, thanks. I got to say Thomas and Ben are very generous guys. They invited me out here, took me to a real nice breakfast.
We wined and dined him at like 7 in the morning.
Yeah, the wine at 7 in the morning was rough. But
so this episode might get a little off track.
Anyway, so thanks. It's cool to be here and to be part of this. I'm a listener as well, so I feel like a fan that like gets on stage with Beyonce or something.
Oh right gosh,
so. We're basically Queen.
Basically Queen. Anyways, so grateful to be here. But a little background on me. Grew up in Sugar City, and the reason I loved that is because, in my opinion, it's like every kid should grow up in Sugar City, Idaho, because it's like you have access to everything. You feel like the world's wide open. You can go out. If you want to go fishing, super easy. Drive 5 minutes to a river. There you go. Yeah. If you want to go camping, grab your buddies, go for the weekend. Like, that's what we did growing up.
Yeah, I mean, like, how many times did we float that little section of river behind my house?
Oh, yeah.
That was like all summer. It's like, today we're doing it again.
Yeah.
We're going to float it again.
It's like,
again.
We've done it 4 times, but let's do it again. Grab the Mountain Dews, put it in the raft, and let's roll, you know?
That was fun.
Canals.
Oh, yeah.
Rivers.
Yeah, I mean... So that's the stuff that I loved growing up. And I think that's a good foundation for like any kid. So, when I have kids, I would love to give them that same experience. Yeah. Like a city's cool, right? But you just don't get that same, vibe or feeling when you're there. When you're out in the outdoors, it's like, that's where great things happen. Good memories are made. So, that's where my love of the outdoors was kind of cultivated.
You said something there about, like in the city. So you live in a more urban environment now.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't want to sidetrack us already, but I'm going to.
Do it.
So
do it. Classic band.
Yeah, that's right. Here we go.
I'm all over the
place.
place.
We're not going to talk about mountain bikes today.
If we get to it, it'll be a surprise for the listeners. Yeah. They know. They know. If you listen, you know. No, but and I'm kind of the same way. I moved to Idaho Falls. It's a more urban environment.
Right.
So how are you still getting in the outdoors with the urban environment? I think all of us kind of have more desk indoor jobs now. Right. So what are you doing to get outside, like on a daily basis or weekly? Or
it's a good question. So that's where mountain biking came in, is because like I said, I had that foundation growing up. And then life starts to happen. You go to college. You just don't have time. You get married. You get a job. Yeah. Then it's like, geez, I just don't have the time I used to in high school. Yeah. And so that's where it was like, okay, now I have to get a little more creative to get myself outdoors. And so that's when I started watching some videos on Instagram about mountain bikes and all this stuff. And I live in Ogden, Utah, which is like prime time for mountain biking. There's trails everywhere in Ogden. Yeah. And they're like world class, well maintained. Like, it's a great place to start mountain biking. And so I hit up my uncle, he's a big mountain biker, and I just said, hey man, like, what's a good bike? Yeah. I want to get into it. And I didn't know a dang thing about mountain biking. I was like, oh, it's easy. You just hop on the bike and start riding like normal.
Yeah.
There's way more to it. So he recommended a bike, bought it, and that was kind of like my vehicle to get out in the outdoors again.
So
Yeah.
I guess talk to us a little bit about the startup like investment to getting into that sport. Like you said,
Yeah.
you got to get a bike, but like
Right.
what also comes along with a bike? I'm
Right.
just because I don't know.
Yeah, from like a gear standpoint.
Yeah, gear and just like making sure that you're gonna enjoy it, so it's
Right.
not like a miserable experience.
Yeah. Get a chamois. Most people don't know what that is,
Nope.
but it's like padded spandex.
Ooh.
Get that.
Sham wow for the bum.
Yeah.
Damn, wow. That soaks up water.
Well, it's like a padded, like
Sometimes when you get,
maybe a chamois soaks up some water too. This is gonna be a rough episode, guys.
no, it's just like it protects you from misfortunes with your seat. I'll say that because they don't make mountain bike seats very comfortable.
Yeah.
They just make it so you have somewhere to sit. So I mean that's an important piece, but.
Well, so are you typically standing up? Is that why?
So it depends. I mean, when you're climbing, you're sitting down,
Got
right?
it.
And your seat position's high and you're just climbing, pedaling away, right? But when you're going down, that's when there's another thing for people who are looking into mountain bikes.
Mm-hmm.
There's something called a dropper seat post. Basically, it's super cool. You have your handlebars. It's just a little lever and you push the button. It's hydraulic. And you can raise and lower your seat just with a push of the button.
So kind of like an office chair type of hydraulic.
Kind of like an office chair, yeah. You just like push the button
Get it
and
out
your
of your
seat,
way.
yeah, your seat will pop up. Or if you're about to go down a drop or start going downhill on that track, you just push the button, push your seat down, and it's out of your way.
Oh, cool.
Because body position is a big deal, things like that.
Yeah.
Anyways, so that's an important component for a bike is like a dropper seat post. I
Right.
would argue that's like one of the most important things to have
Really?
on a mountain bike. Oh yeah.
That's cool.
Anyways, so I
So
would
the
start-
chamois.
Chamois, get that. There's like specific shoes that you can get so you have grip on your pedals, so that when you're doing a downhill run, you don't want your foot to slip off and then you just eat it, right?
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
seen that happen with
Turf
guys
yourself.
that just wear like, excuse me, that breakfast, man.
Abracadabra. Boom. Gotcha.
Excuse me. So, I've seen that happen where guys just are like, oh, I'm just going to wear my Nikes, right? And that's fine, but there's brands of just specific mountain bike shoes.
Well, I think we can
yeah.
all relate to slipping off a pedal and
Oh,
acing your shin.
Oh,
Raking that shin right across there.
Oh, yeah. And-
So I can only imagine that's 10 times worse when you're.
Going down a
yeah,
mountain.
and the thing is, so there's two different kinds of pedals on a mountain bike. You have what they call clipless pedals, which is dumb because those are the ones that actually have a clip on them. I don't know why they call it clipless.
Oh, that's
Don't
weird.
ask me, dude. I don't know. Some mountain bike community thing, but they came up with it. And so you have those, and those are the ones that you're like locked into your pedal with your specific shoe, right?
Yeah.
And in order to get off of that, you have to like twist your foot to let it come off.
Right.
For me, where I was a beginner, I was like, okay, I don't want to like lose my balance, not be able to get out of my clips,
Yeah.
and then smoke my shoulder or something like that.
Yeah.
And so they have just what they call flats, and that's just like your regular pedal, but they have these little bolts on them, and so it's like very grippy, and I have scars on the back of my leg from slipping off or just like stepping over my bike to start riding, and I just like
Rake it across.
brush the pedal and it just like cuts you up. But
Ooh.
Freak.
they're super grippy though once you're riding and you have the right shoes. There's a nice rubbery bottom and it's like you're basically clipped in. Right.
Yeah.
Right. But you can, if you do start to biff, you can bail.
You can bail. Oh yeah.
Yeah, because
yeah.
I've seen those ones with the clips,
Uh-huh.
the clipless, as
Yeah.
you're saying.
Yeah.
And like I remember I was talking to my in-laws and they have those.
Uh-huh.
And my mother-in-law specifically was like, yeah, when I first started doing it,
Yeah.
she's like, I would go to like park my bike and I would just like tip over. And I'm like,
yeah, man.
that makes no sense. Why
Right.
would you want? But I mean, to each their own. To each their
Yeah.
own.
Yeah. So for me as a new rider and people just getting into it, I don't know if intimidated is the right word, but I was like, hey man, if I can just do flats, I'm going to do that instead.
Yeah,
so you
for
can
sure.
bail.
Yeah, so I can bail. It was a little cheaper too, and so I just went with that route, and I love it. The argument for the clips is like you have more efficiency when you're pedaling, but
Because you can probably
right,
pull
yeah,
up.
you have a little bit more up, but
So what would you
Other than
recommend
that.
for somebody starting in?
I would do flats.
Okay.
100%.
Yeah.
Oh
so
yeah.
you felt like that was a good call.
Yeah, and they're starting to get better quality too, and so I see a lot of guys like moving away from the clipless. So
That's cool.
yeah.
So when you were getting your first bike,
Yeah.
and now you've probably bought a bike or two since.
Yeah.
What would you recommend for somebody, kind of price point wise, if they
Okay.
want to get into it? Because
Yeah.
like for me, I don't know. You can probably buy a mountain bike for $10,000. And you can
Yeah,
go to
you could.
you can
You
go to
totally
Walmart for like $60.
Right.
So like
Yeah.
what's a good beginner? Because a lot of people
Yeah.
might not like the sport once they get into it,
Right.
and you don't want to make a ginormous investment.
Yeah. That's a good question. The benefit, if you get into it, you buy a bike and you want to sell it, the used bike market is insane right now.
Oh, cool.
So, I mean, I had a bike that I sold this year, and I sold it for more than I bought it for. Just because with COVID and everything, people are like all about getting outdoors,
Yeah.
and mountain bikes have been sold out everywhere. Like, it's hard to find a budget bike that's good.
Right.
Just from like a store, you got to go to the used market for sure. But my first experience, so my uncle's like the $10,000 bike guy.
Yeah.
And so when I went to him a budget bike was like $3,000. So
Right.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, sweet. Like, let's go for it. And
Yeah.
he sent me a bike and I went for it. Soon after I started riding, people on the trailer were like, dang, that's a nice bike. And I started to realize like I probably went overkill on this thing.
the
Like,
first
it was probably too much bike for me, honestly. It had like huge Fox suspension and stanchions on the front and this sweet rear suspension that like locks out and all this stuff. Like,
Yeah.
it was a sweet bike. It was a carbon fiber frame and everything, like, top of the line deal. Anyways, and so for me, like, that's where I started.
Yeah.
And so it would be hard to go backwards, if you know what I
Yeah,
mean. So I'm
for sure.
probably
Now that
looking
you've experienced
right
the-
now that I've experienced like the Cadillac of mountain bikes.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, now I gotta.
Don't want to go back to Toyota.
Yeah, I can't go back.
Can't go drive a Corolla. Right?
Yeah, I can't go get a Corolla now. I could, but you can buy a great bike for a full suspension bike, probably for like $1,000 to between $1,000 and $2,000.
Okay.
You're not gonna get a carbon fiber frame. That's not a huge deal, honestly,
Yeah.
in my opinion. For someone just starting, like the couple pound or like a pound or two difference isn't gonna ruin your day. It might make your climb a little harder, but
Yeah.
Right.
it's not too bad. So that would be a good budget. I have a buddy, he bought a bike for like $750 and he rode everywhere I rode last year. His bike was just fine. Like, I swapped
So-
him bikes and I would ride his sometimes and it was pretty good.
So really, the price point is just going to more make it like convenient. It's like you can do it with a cheaper.
Oh
bike.
yeah,
Okay.
you bet. And so like the difference is really in the components of the bike.
It's like you're talking about suspensions
Yes.
and the weight of the
Yeah,
bike.
suspension, weight, like the handlebars, wider handlebars make it easier to be more stable. So it's just like these bikes that are higher end just have more thought out like geometry, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like the head angle for your front tire, if it's sticking out like that or if it's tucked
okay.
in more towards the frame, that kind of thing. And so
That's crazy.
anyways, there's geometry that goes into these bikes to like optimize them for climbing or for downhill, or for like enduro, which is both. So like an enduro,
like a hybrid.
Yeah, an enduro is like you're gonna climb, but you're also gonna rip it downhill, and you want to
Yeah.
hit some jumps too. And so that's the bike I had because I was like, I like the BMX side of things too.
Yeah.
And I like to jump and do that kind of stuff. I'm no good at it, but I like it.
Yeah.
I hit a huge, massive jump. There's a bike park in Ogden, and I was going way too fast. I was like so in over my head. I probably went like 10 feet in the air, bailed off my bike, just yard sailed. My water bottle went flying. My glasses were like hanging off my head. A lens popped out.
Oh, man.
It was like, I went with some other guys, and they came up and they were like, "Dude, are you okay?" And luckily I was fine. But
See, the BMX style is fun. It's funny to me because I grew up pretty close to Landon's house, and Landon's dad built the dopest BMX track for us. We were like,
That's pretty
how old
sweet.
were we? Like freaking 6, 7?
Oh, dude, I don't even know.
And we're out there hitting these jumps, and I just remember thinking I was so cool, but I was probably getting like 6 inches off the ground.
Yeah, man.
I just think it's dope that like you're still into that.
Yeah.
I think that's cool.
Yeah, I don't know if my body can take it, but after that, I tamed it down. I never hit that jump again. I was like, I'm not doing that. No way. Next year I'll get it, but and that's the other thing I like about it. You can get into like, oh, this bike or that bike, like all these fine details, but in the reality of it, it's like I was outside.
Yeah.
And it was like I didn't care if I was riding a Ibis, which is a great bike. That's what I had. Or if I'm riding a bike from Walmart, I'm like, I don't even care, dude.
The mongoose.
The mongoose, bro. Yeah. And it's like if I'm on the trail and just outdoors, like challenging myself, that's what I loved about it. Like my first ride on that bike, I took it out and
this is your $3,000 bike.
This is the Ibis, yeah.
Got it.
Anyways, I go out and I'm just like dinking around. I don't know the trails in Ogden very well. So I show up and there's this guy. He's probably like 55 or something like that. And I'm like, oh, I could probably keep up with him.
Yeah.
And we make some conversation. He's like, well, do you want to follow me? And I'm like, yeah, I'd love to. I have no idea where I'm at right now as far as like where the trails go or anything like that. So we start climbing, and this dude smokes me, and I was dying. I was like, I didn't realize how out of shape I was.
Yeah.
And I look back at it now, and I was like, I didn't go far at all. Like, I did not make it. And we get to the top of this little crest it's the Bonneville Shoreline Trail on the Wasatch Front Mountains. It's beautiful, but we get up there, and we were... Knowing now, I didn't know this at the time, but we were only like a quarter of the way to where you actually want to end up on the trail. And I had to tell the dude, I was like, bro, I can't make it. Like, you go on without me. I'm just going to ride down to my pickup and get out of here.
I'm done.
Yeah. But then in my mind, just like the way I am, I'm like, I'm going to conquer that trail. Like, I'm going to get after it. I'm going to make it on that trail. And so having the ability to like try something over and over and over again. And now it's like, I can go do that trail in 30 minutes, right? And it's just like not a big deal. It's just a fun little trail I go on now. Yeah. And then you just keep stepping that up and keep challenging yourself on different lines and different runs. And anyways, that's what I've loved about it. It gets you outdoors, and it's a challenge, and it like gives you that progression, right? So
kind of like it sounds pretty similar to what we've talked about gear wise. Yeah. As far as like we talked about hunting boots the other day.
Sure. Yeah.
And that you can go and be successful in the outdoors with a $60 pair of boots.
Oh yeah.
You can also spend, $400 on a pair of boots, and it's just going. You can still do the activity, but it's going to be more comfort. It's going to give you a wider range, having a little bit nicer gear. So starting out, if you're not going to be like going into the most intense places, the craziest places out there for hunting wise, you can start out basic.
Yeah.
If you want to, and it sounds like the same with mountain biking.
100%.
So another question that I had was. We talked about in a couple episodes ago starting hunting. There's this passport program in Idaho where you don't have to go through hunter's ed. Nice. You don't have to do any of that coursework or anything. You get a one-time chance to go out and hunt with somebody. You get a
That's
license.
Pretty sweet. That's cool.
So if somebody is wanting to get into mountain biking, and they don't want to buy a bike, they don't know if they're even going to like it.
Yeah.
What kind of resources are there? Like rental shops?
Good question.
Are there like trailheads where it's like they have the rentals, they take people up? Is there that kind of opportunity?
They have. I mean, you can go to any bike shop and say, "Hey, I want to rent a full suspension bike." It'll probably cost you, for a good solid bike, $200 for the day.
Gotcha.
Maybe a little less, 150, depends. That's a great way to do it. I did that for my wife because I was like on the edge. I'm like, I'm going to go spend $1,500. I'm going to buy my wife this bike.
Yeah.
And we're going to go together all the time.
Right.
Oh, I was so wrong, but that's okay. So
Because she doesn't like it.
Gentlemen, no. And so rent your wife the bike first.
Yeah.
We went and rented a bike. I took her on a crappy trail. I feel terrible. I ruined it for myself. I should have known.
Should have gone easy.
I should have gone on an easier trail. I hated the trail. It was terrible. But anyways, so we rented her a bike and we were pumped and we were really excited, and we get out there and it's like they rank the trails like a ski run. It was like a black diamond or double black diamond trail. You could like barely ride the thing because it was just like boulders everywhere, and it was crazy. So, anyways, we'll get her back next year, but
so
renting is a great benefit. I mean, you would have to rent a bunch of times to go spend $3,000. You know what I mean? And so you might as well, if you spend $250 renting a couple times and you're like, you know what, I dig this. Like, this is sweet.
Yeah.
Then you can go make that investment, right? So
as far as like mountain biking community, like I know like for hunting they have like elk addicts and stuff like that on Facebook where you can there's like public forums, you can ask questions. Are there things like that I'm assuming there's things like that for mountain biking, but
for sure.
What are they?
For sure. I don't know a ton of them, but there's an app that you can download called Trail Forks.
Okay.
It's cool. It actually gives you a map of like all the trails in the United States, which is pretty sweet. And so you can go in there and there's forums and communities there. You can look up people on their profiles and you can kind of chat with people about the trail. You can give updates on a trail. You can talk about, hey, let's all get together. There's a little group going to wherever, Snow Basin. We're going to go ride that. So there's like communities like that. I'm sure there's other forums too, for sure.
What was it called again?
Trail Forks.
Trail Forks. And is it like bike-specific trails?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
It sounds like a Onyx for biking. So
Probably.
like in the hunting community,
Yeah.
there's an Onyx app where it shows property boundaries and water and things like that.
That's
so,
sweet.
Trail Forks.
So it's cool, and it tells you like, here's what you can expect on the trail. You can upload pictures. There's videos. There's like trail condition updates if it's real wet in the spring or anything like that. So that's really useful for new mountain bikers. That's what I used when I just started. It's like, I don't know where any trails are.
Right,
It's like, I know I'm in the mountains. There's got to be something around here.
Right.
But that's what I used, and it was very useful. Yeah. It tells you
cool.
what direction to ride the trail. Anyways, it gives you everything you need to know.
Trail Forks.
So that,
Trail Forks, plug. Trail Forks.
Trail Forks. There you go.
Yeah, because that would be like one of my biggest questions if I didn't have somebody like holding my hand trying to get into the sport. Would be like, so yeah, I can figure out where a bike shop is. I could probably get a bike, but it's like, now where do I go?
Yeah. Right.
I don't want to just go up to the mountains.
And you don't want to start on like a black diamond,
right?
Like you're talking about with your wife.
Right.
Yeah, that's cool.
That would be horrible.
So, yeah, it's real cool. Like greens, they're pretty just nice and easy. It's good to like, you can learn how to shift and like learn that process and technique, and then you just work your way up, and it's pretty cool.
So how often would you say that you like actually get out and you get to mountain bike? Like how often do you do it?
I mean, I did it 2 or 3 times a week. Yeah. I would either wake up early
just during
morning.
the nicer months.
Yeah.
Obviously we're in winter, we have snow.
Right, yeah, and I live in Utah, and I kick myself for selling my bike because trails we don't, like today, or not today, but this year has just been a crappy year for snow thus far down in Utah, and so it's like I could have been riding all day, all year. And there's guys that they just keep their bike and they ride in the winter, just put a big fat tire on them, and then they just ride in the winter, which would be pretty sweet.
Yeah.
But, so I would say, from like March to freaking November, you can ride all the time.
That's cool.
So, yeah.
So, you said you sold your bike.
Yep.
Is that a common kind of thing? People will sell their bike through and not have one through the winter and then upgrade the next year? Is that kind of the...
Sometimes, it just depends, but that's a lot of the, people will get a new bike every year or something like that.
It's probably like upgrading your bow. You don't need to, but...
Yeah, that honestly wasn't my plan. When I started, I was like, hey, I'm going to make this capital investment. I'm going to, I'm going to ride it for 5 years or 4 years or whatever. But then I was like, dang, the used bike market's pretty dang good. Like, I can get exactly what I put into this and more, and then I can go out and buy the next bike that I'm after. Just like a different model. And so that's kind of where I was, because your riding kind of evolves after your first few years. Then you kind of figure out, okay, like this is what I really like.
Yeah.
Then you can kind of buy a bike that's specific to that type of riding.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And
Anyways.
to probably the area and the trails that you're going to be on.
Right. Yeah. And so like Utah is really good for enduro bikes just because there's a ton of climbing that you can do, but then you can go to like Park City or Deer Valley and they
You
just
ride
have
the
lift
lifts.
access. Yeah, you get to the top of mountain.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
And
They
you
do
just-
that at Targhee too.
Yeah. Targhee, they just opened it up and they just like revamped their trails and stuff.
cool.
And they have some nice trails there as well. People come from all over to ride those.
It's cool.
But yeah, Park City, I mean, you just go to the top of this lift and then you just rip down and like, that's what it's all about.
That sounds my kind of bike.
Oh man.
Climbing part, shake that, dude.
Yeah.
Freaking fork.
Yeah, there's a trail that's well known on the like by Snow Basin, down in Utah, and it's called the like Sardine Loop, and that thing is a beast. Like that climb sucks, but the downhill, so it's this huge loop. I want to say it's like 8 miles or something like that.
Up.
No,
I was like,
it's probably
oh my
like
gosh.
I want to say it's probably like a good 4 or 5 mile climb though, and you're climbing. Let me look it up. I can tell you exactly what the statistics
mileage
are.
is on it.
Let me pull up my Trail Forks here.
Trail
Another plug.
Forks.
Another plug.
We're gonna
Trail
say
Forks.
we're gonna say Trail Forks a bunch of times here so that
Trail
you
Forks,
folks
if you
that
want
are-
to sponsor this video.
yeah, that's right.
Now from our sponsors. Yeah, just kidding.
Yeah, it is like a crazy trail. Anyways, my phone is not working right now, but forgive me.
We can take
Sorry.
pause. You want to take pause?
No,
Yeah.
Let's take pause.
Yeah,
okay,
let's take
we
a
can
pause.
take a
Look it
pause.
up
real
Sounds
quick.
good. Okay, I like it.
Friends and listeners, this felt like a pretty natural place in our conversation to take a quick break, collect some of our thoughts, and we also wanted to stay somewhat consistent with the length of our episodes moving forward. So this is part 1 of this episode, this session. If you are still interested in hearing more of our conversation with Landon, please tune in to part 2.